There is a certain kind of person who stands at the edge of a celebration and feels absolutely nothing. Someone they knew just got promoted, got married, moved to a new city. The room is full of applause. But inside them, there is only silence. Not sadness. Just an eerie, hollow quiet. They smile when they are supposed to smile. They say the right words. They clap at the right moments. But underneath all of that performance, something feels switched off. Like watching someone else's life through foggy glass, unable to feel the warmth on the other side. But if you know someone like this, or if you are someone like this, please do not walk away from this video. Because what looks like coldness from the outside is rarely coldness at all. It is something far more complicated. Something science actually has a name for. Today we are going to decode the psychology of people who watch others succeed and feel nothing. Why they became this way. What is happening in their brain. What it quietly costs them. And most importantly, how they can find their way back to feeling alive again. So why does this happen? Why does a person lose the ability to feel joy for others, or even for themselves? There are actually two very different roads that lead someone to this emotional flatland. And understanding which road was taken changes everything about how we understand them. The first group is born wired differently. Research in sensory processing sensitivity, known as SPS, shows that some people have nervous systems that process emotional information so intensely from birth that the brain eventually learns to mute incoming signals. It is a biological dimmer switch. Protection disguised as distance. The second group did not start this way. Imagine a child who once ran home excited, bursting with news, only to be met with a distracted parent, a dismissive shrug, or worse, ridicule. Over time, that child learns that feeling things out loud is dangerous. So they bury the feeling before it can be hurt. In both cases, what changes is the amygdala. This small, almond-shaped structure deep in the brain is responsible for emotional processing and threat detection. When it is repeatedly flooded or repeatedly dismissed, it begins operating in a kind of low-power mode. Emotional reactions become muffled before they reach the surface. And here is the painful irony. What begins as protection becomes personality. The child who learned not to feel becomes the adult who cannot feel. The survival mechanism works so well that it outlives the danger. Long after the threat is gone, the wall remains perfectly intact. So when this person enters adult life, they carry this emotional silence into every relationship, every birthday party, every moment where the world expects them to feel. They are not broken. They are armored. And armor, worn long enough, begins to feel like skin. The first sign is that they watch others succeed and feel a strange blankness rather than joy or envy. A colleague gets a standing ovation. A friend lands their dream job. Everyone around them erupts. But this person stands very still, nodding, performing the expected reaction while feeling nothing real underneath it. Think of Marcus. He has worked alongside his co-worker for 3 years. The announcement comes that she has been promoted. The entire office cheers. Marcus claps too. But driving home that night, he sits with an unsettling question. Why did I feel nothing? Not even envy. Just empty air. This blankness is connected to a disruption in the default mode network, or DMN. This is the brain system activated when we imagine ourselves in someone else's position. In people who have shut down emotionally, the DMN becomes underactive. They cannot project themselves into another person's joy because they cannot fully access their own. The consequence is a creeping loneliness that they cannot explain. They are surrounded by people. They are not isolated by circumstance. But they feel fundamentally disconnected from every celebration happening around them, like they are watching a film in a language they once spoke fluently but have somehow forgotten. And this disconnection quietly bleeds into how they see their own future too, making the next sign almost inevitable. The second sign is that they struggle to feel excited about their own achievements. They get the promotion. They finish the project. They reach the goal. But there is no inner celebration. No warmth. Just a flat acknowledgement, almost clinical, like crossing an item off a grocery list and moving on. Amora worked for 2 years to finish her degree. The day she graduated, her family threw a party. Photos were taken. Cake was eaten. But alone in her room that night, Amora sat waiting for the feeling to arrive. The feeling never came. She told herself she was just tired. She had been telling herself that for years. The brain science here involves interoception, which is the brain's ability to read its own internal signals. When someone has been emotionally suppressed for long periods, the insular cortex, which processes internal body feelings, becomes desensitized. The brain stops accurately reporting inner emotional states. Success arrives, but the signal gets lost. The emotional consequence of this is a deep, private grief. They see other people celebrate themselves freely and wonder if they are fundamentally defective. They begin to believe they are simply not built for happiness. And that belief, once rooted, becomes one of the hardest walls to dismantle. But the numbness does not stop at achievements. It extends outward, changing how they connect with the people they love most. The third sign is that they feel emotionally distant in relationships even when they deeply care. They love people. They genuinely do. But they cannot always feel that love in a way that makes it real. Conversations feel like transactions. Hugs feel procedural. And the person standing in front of them, needing warmth, is left reaching across an invisible gap. Think of Daniel and his partner. She shares exciting news about a trip she is planning. Her eyes are bright. Her voice lifts. Daniel listens, nods, asks reasonable questions. But his partner can feel the absence. She says later, quietly, that talking to him sometimes feels like talking to a very polite stranger. This is linked to reduced activity in mirror neurons, the specialized brain cells that allow us to feel what others are feeling. In someone who has chronically suppressed emotional input, mirror neuron responsiveness weakens over time. They see the emotion on someone else's face but cannot automatically catch it the way a neurotypically expressive person does. What this costs them relationally is enormous. Partners feel unseen. Friends slowly stop sharing. Family members label them cold or difficult. And the person themselves begins to carry a profound guilt, knowing they love these people but unable to prove it in the language those people need to hear. And it is not just love that they struggle to access. Even their thinking becomes infected by the silence. The fourth sign is that they experience something called analysis paralysis when it comes to joy. They overthink happiness. When something good happens, instead of receiving it, they immediately interrogate it. Is this real? Will it last? Do I deserve this? Their prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, hijacks every emotional moment before it can be felt. Imagine Sophie. She receives a heartfelt compliment from someone she admires. For a moment, something flickers. But before she can feel it, her mind rushes in. Why would they say that? What do they want? Is it genuine? By the time she is done analyzing, the feeling is gone. She gave herself no space to simply receive. This is classic metacognition turned against the self. Metacognition is the brain's ability to think about its own thinking. When this system is overactivated, it becomes a trap. Every emotion gets reviewed before it is felt. Every moment of potential joy gets filtered through a layer of intellectual suspicion that kills it quietly before it blooms. The emotional toll is a life lived slightly removed from itself. Like being the narrator of your own story instead of the main character. You observe your life with precision and intelligence, but you do not inhabit it. You understand your feelings as concepts, but you cannot live them as experiences. And this watching from the outside has one particularly painful consequence that most people around them never see. The fifth sign is that they have an intense, complicated relationship with other people's suffering. Even though they cannot feel joy easily, they often feel other people's pain very deeply, sometimes against their will. It is as if the emotional channel for suffering stayed open while the one for celebration was quietly sealed. Think of Eli. He cannot muster excitement when his friend gets engaged. He sat through the announcement dry-eyed and distant. But 2 weeks later, when he heard that a stranger lost their child in the news, he sat in his car and quietly fell apart. The grief hit him like a wave with no warning. This asymmetry lives in the amygdala's threat response. The brain is hardwired to prioritize negative emotional signals because they signal danger. In someone who has shut down, the positive channels get muted first. But the threat response channel remains open because the nervous system still needs to monitor for harm. Pain gets through. Joy does not. What this creates is a deeply confusing inner world. They think they are emotionally numb. But then grief or anxiety arrives with full force and they do not understand why they can feel this but not the other things. They begin to believe they are broken in some specific and permanent way. They are not. They are imbalanced. And this imbalance has a way of shrinking the world around them over time if it is left unnamed and unaddressed. And here is what most people never stop to realize. These are not cold people. They are not empty people. They are people who learned, somewhere along the way, that feeling was not safe. That joy was temporary. That hope was dangerous. They became their own emotional bodyguards. And bodyguards, by design, do not dance at the party. They stand by the door. Watching. Protecting. Alone. So what can they do? They cannot simply turn this off. They cannot think their way into feeling. They cannot decide one morning to be warm and have it instantly be true. The emotional numbness was built over years, and it will be rebuilt over time, with intention, with science, and with patience. There are 3 freeing principles that psychological research points to. Not quick fixes. Not affirmations. Real shifts that slowly rewire the nervous system and open the sealed channels again. These principles are embodiment over analysis, graduated exposure to joy, and the radical practice of receiving without qualifying. The first principle is embodiment over analysis. Because the thinking brain keeps hijacking emotional experience, the path back to feeling is through the body, not the mind. Research in somatic psychology shows that slow, intentional physical sensations, cold water on the face, pressing feet into the floor, placing a hand on the chest, can bypass intellectual filtering and deliver the brain a direct emotional. The second principle is graduated exposure to joy. Like someone recovering from a long illness who must walk before they run, emotionally numb people need to practice noticing small positive moments without analyzing them. Not force happiness. Just notice. A good cup of coffee. A beam of light. A kind voice. Brief, low-stakes moments of potential warmth, practice daily. The third principle is receiving without qualifying. Every time someone gives them a compliment, an achievement, or a moment of celebration, they practice saying only 2 words internally before the analysis begins. Thank you. Not thank you but. Not thank you, however. Just thank you. This teaches the prefrontal cortex to stand aside long enough for the feeling to land. When they practice this letting go, something subtle begins to change. The wall does not crumble overnight. But small cracks appear. Light finds its way through. They notice one day that a friend's laugh made them smile before they could stop it. That a piece of music reached somewhere inside them. That they cried at something beautiful rather than only at something broken. And slowly, the person who once stood at the edge of every celebration begins to step inside. Not loudly. Not all at once. But with the quiet, trembling courage of someone who has learned that feeling is not the enemy. That joy is not a trap. That they are allowed to be warm. Like a long-dimmed light slowly remembering how to glow. These are people who think deeply, feel privately, and love quietly. They are not cold. They are careful. They are not empty. They are carrying more than most people will ever understand. If this is you, or someone you love, know that the capacity to feel was never truly lost. It was only hidden behind the walls that once kept you safe. If this video felt familiar to you, leave a comment below telling me which sign resonated with you most. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today to feel less alone in this. If this video helped you feel lighter, even by the smallest amount, please press like and share it with someone who might need it. Thank you so much for watching. Do not forget to subscribe so we can keep exploring the deeper layers of the human mind together.